Aysha Wazwaz.
Everyone. I must admit, this is really beautiful. This is not something like I had ever seen before. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's so beautiful. And I wish I could understand every single word that was said in Urdu, but I'm sure it's going to be something beautiful. I'm sure I could hear the dhikr in the words. I can feel the praise for the Prophet ﷺ. I can feel it, even though I don't understand it, but it's outstandingly beautiful. So I was actually asked to talk about marriage in Islam, well, within that area. So I thought, I wanted to introduce it in a certain way that's probably, within the context of, well, whether our beautiful, let's say, situation and occasion today, and also the situation that many of what I would be getting. I do matchmaking and I also do chaplaincy, and I also do a lot of counseling. But I thought it would be good to just mention a number of different things, and especially for the younger generation. And what I mean by younger, the 20s right now, they're considered the younger, right? There you go. I love that spirit. I love that spirit. So, what I actually want to talk about, like I said, marriage. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it, especially right now with the rise of feminism and rise of a number of different topics. I'm not going to talk about it from the philosophical aspect. No, 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 no. That's okay. I'm not going to talk about it from the philosophical aspect, but I'm going to talk about it from the Islamic side of it, as in contrast to what right now is really coming in within the society. When we speak about marriage right now, many are, I would say, abstaining from marriage and trying to stay away from marriage, because they would assume that with marriage, it's going to be somebody on your case, somebody that's going to be basically, authoritative over you and all that type of rhetoric. But I think it's very important to mention that when we speak about marriage, we look at it from the lens of Quran and Sunnah. So what does that really mean? Whenever you want to scrutinize any matter or you want to study any matter, you actually have to look at it through the Quran and the Sunnah, through two lenses, to make sure you're scrutinizing it the right way and not putting in a number of different philosophies, cultures, personal biases coming into, let me say, blurring the vision of how you want to see things. So, what is the purpose, and why does Islam actually encourage marriage after all? So, in Islam, there are actually five main categories whenever we talk about social justice, purpose in life, whatever law we're talking about in Islam, anything is actually going to go back to five main categories. And the five main categories, it's not me made up, it's actually by the scholars of fiqh who actually derived it from the Quran, like from their reading in the Quran and their reading in the Prophet ﷺ's tradition. And they put it within five categories, that it's all to maintain one, everything in Islam, the rules, the laws, etc. It's to maintain one, the deen; two, the nafs. Don't worry, I'll interpret that. The three, the aql; four, the ird, the mal. So what is that? D stands for deen, which means spirituality. N stands for nafs, which means physical health in a person's life. And A stands for aql, which means mental health and mind. And four stands for ird, which actually means chastity and family. And five stands for mal, which means property and wealth. So let's do that again. DNAIM. So whenever you want to answer any topic on Islam, you're going to go back to this five main rule. Consider it as a like a math formula in Islam, like a legal maxim. So having that being said, so when we speak about marriage, what is the purpose of marriage? Looking through the lens of the DNAIM that I just mentioned. So number one is that when we're looking at marriage, the first purpose of marriage is really to maintain your deen, to maintain your spirituality. to help you maintain your religious connection with Allah Almighty. How is that supposed to be achieved? So when we actually look at the Prophet ﷺ in a number of different hadith, he actually said, وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةٌ, that even in other words, what you do with your husband, even a wife and a husband being intimate, is actually a form of sadaqah. What is that telling us? It's actually telling us, it's actually looking at it from a different lens of being a sexual lens to actually making a spiritual relationship between the husband and wife. It's in order to maintain focus from looking at haram things to looking at the life and the relationship, to help us maintain a connection between myself and this man, to make it into a halal relationship, a spiritual relationship, and which is why the Prophet ﷺ actually helped us in looking and rereading and redefining the relationship, and he called it, it's a sadaqah. It's actually a form of a religious contribution. It's a religious contribution. It's a donation. It's actually your connection by dealing with your husband. It's actually your religious contribution to maintain a relationship between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though technically you're actually making a relationship with this man, or this man making a relationship with a wife. But the Prophet ﷺ was indicating that all this is actually to bring about a connection, a spiritual connection through this relationship. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ emphasized that in order to achieve that, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا جَاءَكُم مَّن تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ. If you get a proposal, that is, that you would accept their piety and you would accept their morality, then give them that, in other words, basically the okay for marriage. In other words, in order to achieve that goal of religiosity, you want to make sure that the candidate actually holds those elements of, one, morality, two, deen. And that's why the same thing the Prophet ﷺ, on the other hand, also said for the women. The Prophet ﷺ said, that women should be married, or are usually married, for 4 reasons. And he said that, but stick to the deen, stick to her piety, her religiosity, because that's what's going to help you achieve that purpose of marriage. And that's why he said, hold on to the piety part, to put the piety element, or else you will be in total loss. Because if you're just going to stick to the looks, you're going to stick into the money, you're going to look at the materialistic stuff, then you're going to end up really not getting to the main purpose of why you wanted to get married in the beginning. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ actually emphasized these points. So now that's the deen part of it. In other words, when you go into marriage, the first thing that you want to look for is really the piety. So that's the deen part of it. Number 2 is really the nafs. So maintaining the nafs part of it. What is the nafs? So nafs is basically a personal stability, health stability. You're getting into bringing in physical health, psychological health, all those different key elements in order to bring about happiness. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ مِنَ الْمَاءِ بَشَرًا فَجَعَلَهُ نَسَبًا وَصِهْرًا وَكَانَ رَبُّكَ قَدِيرًا. So the ayah actually says, and he was the one that created you from water. In other words, basically a fluid. And what did he do? He made them into human beings. And then فَجَعَلَهُ نَسَبًا وَصِهْرًا, made him into, the word nasab. Nasab actually means family. It's to make family. But the sihr is that connection in where it's to support one another. And by giving in that support, you're creating that inner stability. You're creating the nasab. You're creating the sihr. You're creating that support even for the nafs, for your own self. Now, the third part about that nafs is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاسْتَعْمَرَكُمْ فِيهَا, and he had made you into making a civilization. So what does it actually mean? وَاسْتَعْمَرَكُمْ فِيهَا. اسْتَعْمَرَكُمْ فِيهَا means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the potential in order to bring about a civilization, gave us the potential in order to bring about modernity, in order to bring about and implement stability in all the means to stability. But the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually mentions that one within the context of marriage, for example, and progeny and the human beings actually reproducing is in order to emphasize the importance of why it is important to make family and continue the structure of reproduction in order to continue making a civilization. Now, the third part, I won't be taking long, which is aql, mental health. Which is, remember, DNAIM. So the third part is actually the mental health and the focus. Why is marriage supposed to be something that's supposed to bring in the mental health? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. He said, from amongst the signs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created from your own selves pairs. And he said, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so that you will find tranquility in it. In modern day terms, it's stability. It's good mental health. That's when we look at the word لِتَسْكُنُوا. What is sukoon? Sukoon is the opposite of turbulences. Sukoon is the opposite of when we say, what was that? Turmoil, exactly. So sukoon is the opposite of that. What does it actually mean? Well, it's referring to the mental health stability. When we speak about marriage bringing in mental health, unfortunately, right now, there's definitely this war on marriage, and that it's all about turbulences, it's all about troubles, it's all about problems between husbands and wives, and hey, you're going to end up getting divorced, so why go in it? It's all about confusion, and there's no man that is good enough, or no woman that is good enough, and the list goes on and on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, well, no, wait a minute, you have to look into marriage. You got to look into marriage, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's actually from amongst the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He created the spouses, and He created this pattern لِتَسْكُنُوا إليها, in order to bring about that mental stability. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. Yes, the sukoon is supposed to be there, but how do we actually bring about that tranquility? How do we bring in that mental health? How do we bring in that calmness? How do we bring in this sukoon that was intended for marriage? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, you already have the potential. جَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. He created from amongst you the mawadda, the love, compassion, the love and compassion. Now, looking at that point, when we're looking at love and compassion, how do we actually get to that? Well, that's where, when we look at the part about maintaining the I one, which is the ird, the chastity in the family, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اتَّقُوا رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. O people, have religious integrity, for your Lord Almighty created you from one soul, and He made from it and made from خلق منها زوجها, and created from it its own pair. وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء, and created from them many men and many women. Now, here's the thing, is that when you look at that maintaining chastity and ird, and maintaining family, how is that supposed to be a key thing within marriage? Maintaining chastity is actually maintaining one's focus from looking at the world in pleasures to being able to sustain one's focus by maintaining it within halal. To make sure that it is within halal, because you as a human being, you've got the different needs, whether the needs that we share with animals, whether that's food, life, and reproduction, and all these different things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the halal amount to help us stay within focus and stay directed for the reasons that we were created for, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually made marriage halal, in order to give us the amount to help us continue being fixated on the purpose that we were created for, which is that we were created to be tested. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the ayah, والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we would actually make the dua. Why do we actually make a dua? Isn't it supposed to be this invocation that's supposed to come out just from ourselves? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually telling us, you say it. Learn how to recognize it, because you may lose the place of focus on what you need to reach out, what your ultimate goal should be. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, now you say it, repeat it. What is that? رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا. Oh Allah Almighty, make from our spouses قُرَّةَ أَعْيُن, a place where we would find tranquility, قُرَّةَ أَعْيُن, stability, where we would find happiness. وَجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. And let us be from those that are good examples for not everyone else, but even for those that are in the highest level of piety, for al-muttaqin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make, who's getting married here? There's the bride. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make her and her husband, inshallah, qurrata a'yun, and give them also, inshallah, ya Rabbi, give them also good children, and make this marriage be in stability, inshallah, and make them lil-muttaqina a'imma, make them lil-muttaqina, for the pious ones, make them good examples and good leaders for others to actually take in role models. Ameen ya Rabbi. Now, things to consider in order to achieve that goal. All right, what should we consider? So in order to achieve that goal, akhlaq and akhlaq and akhlaq. That's the most important thing that you want to consider. But what does it mean to actually get to akhlaq? What does morality actually mean? Morality stands on four different elements. Morality stands on number one, which is justice. But here's one thing. At many times, especially when we're talking husband and wife, many times it's so easy to speak about justice. This is my right, this is your right, and then we go into, well, you missed out on this right, and therefore I would give myself the justification to miss out on another right. And that's what ends up becoming this battle. It becomes a battle type of thing between countries and between different transactions. We would actually say, this is my right, this is your right. But in terms of marriage, the situation is absolutely and totally different, because it's not always based on my right and your right. Now, this doesn't mean that justice in marriage should not be considered. It definitely should be considered. There's no doubt about that. But it's also really important to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. Allah Almighty orders for justice and ihsan. The difference between both is actually the difference in level, and the difference between both is actually a difference in akhlaq and the level of akhlaq that we're talking about. Because adl is justice. You give me this much, therefore I give you this much. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, He orders for al-adl, for justice, equity, but al-ihsan is a higher level. So once your husband or your spouse does not give you what he should be giving you, don't give yourself the justification, then therefore I get to pull, and it becomes a tug of war. What should we do? Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. When a person misses out on part of their responsibility, you give in to be the person living in ihsan, the person living in a higher level of piety. And that's how you could actually win the person's heart. Winning a person's heart is more important than winning the argument. You can go into an argument, and the argument is going to develop animosity after animosity, and then it becomes, this marriage then becomes just an issue of a battle. But in order to achieve that stability, you need to always remember, winning the heart is more important than winning the argument. You can go on and on. And I'll tell you, there's so many different reasons to how we can have differences of opinions. Is it cultural? Even in science, where it is actually based on numbers, we can also have differences of opinions on whether this is a good idea or a bad idea, even when numbers are involved. How is it when we're talking about different perspectives where the pros and the cons are not always clearly visible? So in that situation, sometimes giving in is actually part of that. So that's the first thing in akhlaq, which is number one, justice. But don't look at justice and just focus on that. Look at ihsan. Number two is actually sabr, patience. What is patience? Patience is really giving in, even when the person in front of you might not have actually given you your right. You're hanging in there. As women, we tend to lose patience faster, even though we're actually a lot more patient. I know, word of discrepancy, self-contradictory, but here's one thing. We may be patient in some matters, but then when we want something, we tend to want it right away. We can't always wait. And then it becomes this accusation. And I find that very, very often when I do counseling. And then the woman is like, he's taking too long. Indeed, men take longer to process than women. It's so obvious. They take much longer. To you, I've got the idea. It's clear to me. And here we go. Why don't we just start? You decide on a trip, and it'll take him a few months to decide on it. But to you, it'll just take you a couple of hours, and you have already made your decision. It takes longer to process, whether it's because of their anatomy, whether it's, for many different reasons. Having the sabr is extremely important. Hanging in there. What does having patience actually mean? It means taming your tantrum. It means working on your temper management. It means not letting yourself go into these extreme emotions when things are not done the way you want it to be done, or when you want it to be done. It means hanging in there and not getting into that fast emotional tantrum and letting your principle control you and not your tantrum control you. Not your emotions, but your principle and your aql control you. Your wisdom control you, not your emotions. As women, we sometimes have a problem with that because we are more emotional than actually trying to focus on rational. We focus more on narrative than actually the argument. And then we would always say, well, you didn't consider this. I want this. Say it. Say what you want. Men, sometimes it's really strange, but this is really true. It's really strange. Something they would want something and it's right in front of them. They can't even see it. They can't even see it. If you want something, say it. If you want something, say it. If you want to hug, say you want to hug. I know as women, it makes no sense for me to tell you, hey, I want this because it's supposed to seem special by you giving it to me. But if you want it, they can't even see a materialistic item in front of them, let alone something that is hidden, which is your emotions. This is not being whatsoever, anti-men, but this is just understanding how things function. And many times when marriage problems come to me, many times it's like I always have to repeat, sister, tell him what you want. And she would say, but he's supposed to recognize it. I'm like, trust me, even if he's looking for his keys and they're right in front of him on the countertop, he's not going to find it. He won't even see it. It all of a sudden becomes blank. So let alone to actually see your feelings. Say it. Having the sabr actually means holding your emotions, letting your principle determine your behavior, and letting that wisdom come in rather than your tantrums. Number 3, so we said the first one was justice, the second one was sabr, the third one is actually shaja'a. It's actually courage. Now, here's why are we saying courage? It's so often that, and it's so common that many times there comes in this race in wanting to appear in a certain way. You might not actually have what other girls have, etc. And it becomes, how do I actually live the courage that I'm actually satisfied with what I have? Have the courage to actually, yes, do the right thing, and have the courage not to necessarily go into this type of a competition with other people. Your marriage and your situation is unique. Don't compare yourself with other people. Have the courage to actually live based on your situation. That courage is extremely important. Now, courage in marriage, we're talking about it, you can understand it in so many different angles. I'm just, emphasizing what usually comes to me. And the fourth one is actually iffa. Iffa in marriage, chastity, and maintaining chastity is extremely important in making a stable and a happy marriage. What is iffa? Iffa, that this is your husband. He is your only halal person. Anything outside of marriage, whether that is making a relationship outside to give you that, let's call it that, that emotional side of it, or whatever it is. If you want it, do it with your husband. Only the halal way. Your husband is your only place. Anything outside of that is actually going to be bringing in that instability, whether it's from the man's side or whether it's from the woman's side, the same thing. That's why to do it in the halal way, staying away from porn, staying away from anything that is relationship, even lowering the gaze is actually extremely important, because you will start finding your husband as your soulmate once you learn how to lower your gaze from looking outside of this soulmate of yours. You will find your content and your satisfaction in him. Same thing for him. We will tell him, lower your gaze, whether it's from looking on virtual things or whether it's looking at real women, etc. Lowering your gaze is going to help you find all the beauty in your wife. That's the same thing we tell both. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this marriage. These are just the four things that we just mentioned. All right. So a number of different things we covered. And barakallahu fikum, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rabbi, I don't know how long I took, but Allah yahfadhku ya Rabbi. I'm so happy that I actually came here. It's so beautiful. I wish I can stay longer for the nasheed. I'm really enjoying it, and I wish I could do the same and engage in the nasheed and actually read those lines. Yeah. And jazakumullah khairan for listening. Sorry for taking too long. And barakallahu fikum. And should I answer any questions or?
Yeah, if anybody has questions, ask.
I guess it's clear.
So I can't tell my husband I love Richard Gere.
You can't tell your husband, what was that?
I love Richard Gere.
I love what?
Richard Gere.
Oh well, no, you don't want, you want to make sure that when we're talking about expressing, you want to make sure, your husband feels, and this is part of manhood. Here's one thing, just as you as a woman want to feel that you are the prettiest and you are the most important person in his life, you want to make sure that you also do the same for your husband. Make him feel that he's the most manly. For men, they focus more on action than words. For women, they more focus on words than actions.
So Sabine, starting today, you're going to tell us that you look like Shah Rukh Khan.
Well, you don't want to do that, because then that's actually comparing Shah Rukh Khan as being the model. You're actually going to tell him he is the best looking.
Maybe you can say Shah Rukh Khan looks like you.
There you go. But it's really important, oh, really? Okay. I'm not sure who that is, but it seems like a. Yep.
The very first concept you shared, sleeping with your husband is like sadaqah, so it's like sawab. It is.
So yes, the answer is yes. It is like that. It's definitely a spiritual connection. Absolutely. And whether that is intimacy, yes, it is actually like that. But that doesn't mean, okay, I finished my portion of salat. Okay, salah is, if you look at in Islam, there are certain things that you cannot combine intentions in. So you can't say, okay, I did my portion of salah by being intimate with my husband. Okay. Okay. The web, yes, you will get, okay, you will get, all right, you will get rewarded for it. You will get rewarded for it. Absolutely. If you had the intention, I'm doing it for halal reasons. And that's why even if your husband, so here's the thing. I know many times as women, when our husbands sometimes want to be intimate, we're not necessarily there. So in that situation, believe it or not, but you being available is in itself actually your portion of ibadah, portion of worship. So even if you are not feeling it, you being available is actually your portion of, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked me to be available, and here I am. I'm available, you'll get that portion of ibadah.
Goes for anything. Like anybody asks me to do me a favor, and if I feel like I don't like doing, but if I did it,
That's a different kind of favor though.
yeah. No, but that's the thing. It's your intention of doing something
Right.
beyond even when you don't have desire.
Right. And it's
In any
absolutely, it can be in any.
mother.
Right.
Let's do a dua.
Let's do a dua. All right. Okay.
Okay, let's do a dua and then we'll do
I'll make it short then. Yeah, everybody loves the discussion, I guess. I hope you guys don't, prorate my lectures. Religiously rated R.
No, but I guess that's what I liked about it, that the concept in Quran exactly.
Absolutely. It's really sad that at many times when we hear lectures, it's focused on one side, but then you end up needing to search for other places that speaks about the matters with transparency.
Yeah.
You have to, we have to actually look at these elements that are actually part of Islam. So it's actually a religious connection. It's not whatsoever like a Christian, like the Christian.
Opinion.
Absolutely, it's not a personal opinion. It's actually a religious connection. So should we, inshallah, make the dua? And what's
Yeah.
that? What's the bride's
Sophia.
name? Sophia.
And his name is Hamad.
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 Okay,
Sophia
I didn't know
Hamad.
Pakistani's name Hamad.
Yes, we do.
Well, you do. Okay, well, here we go.
Hamad, and make special dua for his mother because she was a little bit sick last week.
Oh,
so-
ya Allah. So, sorry about that. I think I'm starting to go now. It's actually, sorry about that, ladies.
Let's do dua and then we'll do some.
Should I do it in English?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it in English so everybody can understand it. Ya Allah, Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt. Oh Allah, guide us as those that you have guided, and make us see you as the authority and make us take you in authority. Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, O Lord Almighty, you are the most powerful, and you are the one to have given us all the blessings to have been joined here. Ya Allah, join us for your sake and make us from those that will join for your sake, and make us from those that will love for your sake. And Ya Allah, make us from those that will be joined together in Jannah. Ya Allah, join Sophia and Hamad in your light, on your light, and bless them with your light, and bless them with guidance, bless them with stability, and bless them with justice, bless them with love, bless them with happiness, and bless them to be joined in Jannah. Ameen. Ya Allah, bless them as those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you had said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you had said, Udkhulul jannata antum wa azwajukum tuhbarun. Enter Jannah, you and your spouses dwelled in Jannah. Ya Allah, dwell Sophia and Hamad in Jannah, and dwell us all in Jannah, and dwell us, Ya Allah, dwell us all with our spouses in Jannah. And Ya Allah, if any of us have any turbulences with their spouses within this group, Ya Allah, take away the turbulences, take away the tensions, take away any type of animosity, and make us from those that will have stable marriages, happy marriages, loving marriages, and good and pious children. Ya Allah, make our marriages bring in fruit, the fruit of a good marriage and pious children. Ya Allah, guide our children. Ya Allah, take away all the trials that they will be facing in school, in public, and in their personal life. Ya Allah, make us from those that are guided, guide our children, and make us be the examples to guide others. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, make our spouses be our place of adornment, make our spouses be our place of happiness, and make us for our spouses be the place of tranquility, compassion, and love. Ya Allah, guide us and guard us. And Ya Allah, guard our children, guard our deen. Ya Allah, preserve our deen. Ya Allah, preserve our wealth, preserve our health, and preserve our mental health. Ya Allah, make us from those that gather for your sake and depart for your sake, and make us from those that will love for your sake and those that will hate for your sake, and make us from those that will be gathered on Judgment Day in Jannah, and be those that where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will say, وَنَزَعْنَا مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِم مِّنْ غِلٍّ إِخْوَانًا عَلَى سُرُرٍ مُتَقَابِلِينَ. And we had uprooted any animosity in their hearts, loving brothers and loving sisters in Jannah, on the in Jannah, on higher beds. Ya Allah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you all, inshallah, live in happiness. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you good health and give you good wealth, halal wealth, and give you extended happiness, and guide all your children. And barakallahu fikum and jazakumullah khairan for this invitation.
Peace in Pakistan and everybody.
Oh, Ya Allah, now you just hurt me right there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give peace in Pakistan. And of course, also peace in India for the Muslims there that are right now facing a whole different prosecution right now, and Kashmir as well, of course, in Palestine and Syria, and the list keeps on growing and growing. Wallahu al-musta'an. Jazakumullah khairan. Yeah, I'll take it out.
You can do one now.